Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the cEDH cast. We are doing our weekly special, Greedy Keeps, where we go over the Mulligan decisions we use when building and working with a deck that we play. So this week, I am tackling my Cazur and Ukkima food chain deck known as a Hermit, a Warrior, and a Whalewolf walk into a bar, which I've been told by Braden is simultaneously beautiful and terrible. So this deck is a hybrid deck. It's a hybrid between food chain lines using Ukkima as a way to win off of infinite mana with food chain, and using lines with Hermit Druid. So basically using Hermit Druid to mill your entire deck and then casting something like a Dread Return after you trigger a couple creatures, bringing them back out of your graveyard. So that's the deck. Let's check out this first hand. So this is my starting 7. I'm not in love with it. It is definitely playable, and it's got a lot of interesting stuff. The choke on mana here makes me a little nervous to really proceed with this hand, because we can obviously go like turn 1 nurturing peatland into Fyndhorn Elves, which is obviously great to get a dork out turn 1, but then we're playing a Lotus Petal, and then maybe like cracking the brainstorm, or cracking the petal to brainstorm into a land, which is just like a risky, scary proposition all around. And then if we do that and we don't see a land, we are stuck and we can't even use the mystical tutor to shuffle our library. So 9 times out of 10, I do not keep this, and I would rather mulligan. So let's check out our second 7. This hand is pretty bad. We never want to see Dread Return in our opener, just because we want it in our library. Limdu's Walt's a great card, Dispel's a great card, Notion Thief's a great card, but we're not doing anything on the first turn of the game, and this is relatively bad. So let's go down to 6. All right, we are looking at Green Sun Zenith, Overgrown Tomb, Tainted Pact, Rhystic Study, Diabolic Intent. This hand is a great 6. I love this as a 6. So my thought process here, I do play Dryad Arbor in the deck, so turn 1 is definitely play a green source, go get the Dryad Arbor so that I have 3 mana on turn 2. With that 3 mana, I'm probably looking to jam a Rhystic Study. Another good benefit of this hand is that Tainted Pact is probably the best tutor in our whole deck. A lot of the times I will, at end step, exile like 60 cards of my deck in hopes that I can flip into a food chain and hopefully hit one of my 2 enablers for the food chain combo, which is Eternal Scourge and Mist Hollow Griffin. So if I can hit one of those 2, then the Tainted Pact is just killer. And I've won many games by like end step Tainted Pact to get a food chain and exiling my enabler and just winning from there. So that in mind, this is a pretty good 6. There is 2 arguments to be made with this hand. There's an argument where you say you don't want to sack your Dryad Arbor to your Diabolic Intents, and because you have no other creatures, your Diabolic Intent's a little sketchy in this hand, which is very valid, but you are a quick deck, and knowing that, like, getting out explosively is pretty okay. So the cards I would choose to bottom would either be one of the lands, which would probably be... I tend to not want to fetch unless I really have to a lot of the time, so I would probably put like the Verdant on the bottom. That's my instinct with this hand. So, all right. So that's my keepable 6. I keep everything but the Verdant Catacombs, and then I move to my next attempt. All right, so this is a complete fresh 7, and it's a little awkward. An early Hermit Druid's pretty awesome, and anytime you can look at an early Hermit Druid and know that you don't have any of your other combo pieces in your hand, like your Narcomoeba or your Fate Stitcher for the Hermit Druid lines, that's fine. We don't have anything turn 1, which is huge because this is a very aggressive deck, and if we're not doing anything turn 1, it's pretty bad. On the other hand, you do have things like Wall of Roots, which is an amazing card in the deck. Sylvan Library is obviously a great card, and Plunge into Darkness can get you there, but I'm definitely never going to keep a first 7 where you don't do anything turn 1. Okay, this hand I don't want to talk about for more than 2 seconds because it's just so bad. So let's go down to 6. That was nearly unkeepable in every level. This hand is this would be our 6, and because of that, it's a little better. But I mean, we go, yeah. I accidentally hit the mulligan hand there, but that was what that hand was. Now this is tough. We are in a tough spot now that we're down to this 5-card hand. With this, I think the plan. So there's two ways you can approach this, right? You can either go to 4, which is not great, or you can try and keep this on the back of Demonic Consultation, which is pretty spicy. So with that, I definitely don't want Manipulate Fate in the hand, and I don't think we need Plunge into Darkness. Plunge can maybe save us if things are going like really awry. So I think in this hand I just keep the land and put Plunge into Darkness and Manipulate Fate on the bottom. I really don't want to go down to 4. This is pretty bad though. Like, don't get me wrong, this is a terrible spot. With the Consultation, there's a couple things we can do. We can name Command Tower, which obviously is not anywhere we want to be. We can name Mana Crypt or Soul Ring, and then you can play the Food Chain, but then you don't have anything to cast off of Food Chain. Because Cazur is only green and 3 colorless mana, there is a world in which you draw another land here, and then you do name Mana Crypt because you go grab the Mana Crypt, slam down the food chain, or slam down the Cazur, and then the turn after that you slam down the Food Chain if you happen to have an enabler here. But the plan definitely is to put Plunge and Manipulate to the bottom and keep this sketchy Demonic Consultation 5. So let's hope for a better 7 after this. Yeah, and we got it. This hand is pretty awesome. It's a turn 1 Sylvan Library, pretty instinctively. You just want to get that card on as much as possible. This hand is very aggressive with your life total, though. That is one thing to be very, very careful of. This hand will deplete your life so fast. And having the Ad Nauseam there is obviously really amazing. You can basically... There's a world where you can have it on turn 2. If you instead go with Imperial Seal turn 1 and make it look like you don't have anything, you can get something crazy like a Dark Ritual and go for a turn 2 Ad Naus if that's your plan, which there's definitely a world where that's a possibility, and there's a world where you can go for it. But either way, so my base instinct is to make the safe play here and go turn 1, Bayou, Mana Crypt, Sylvan Library, and then just see all the great draws that we get moving forward. So that's an easy keepable 7. But there is definitely, if you're in a pod with decks that aren't going to punish you for an early Ad Nauseam, decks that aren't holding up a lot of interaction in the first 2 turns, then there definitely is a world where you can Imperial Seal there for something to get you the mana to Ad Nauseam. So a very, very interesting 7. So that's a keep. We'll go to another one. Okay. Now, to be clear, I don't think I said this when we first started talking about this deck, but this is a deck where I expect to mulligan a good amount because you do have Hermit Druid cards like Postmortem Lunge, which are amazing when you top deck them when your Hermit Druid dies, but in times like these, or actually when you have a Thassa's Oracle in the graveyard, but when you have a Postmortem Lunge and a Fate Stitcher in your hand, you get rid of that 7 as fast as possible. Okay. This is one of those second 7s where you say, I have a lot of turn 1 interaction. I can exile my enablers with Foresight the turn after that, but this hand is just slow. If you're maybe going first and you have a feeling, like, I just don't want to ever encourage keeping a hand like this. We're playing an aggressive deck, and to keep a hand like this would be sort of giving up the ghost a little early. So let's go to our 6. Okay. This hand is very bad. There's too many ramp sources. With Ukkima and Cazur in the command zone, you can play them, but they don't get you card advantage. So this hand is just a lot of absolutely nothing. So we'll get rid of it. Okay, so this is our 5, and it's such a tough 5. Because unfortunately, our Arbor Elf does not work with anything in our hand. Now, that being said, I did talk about the merits of Tainted Pact in a hand like this. So it's also tough because, instinctually you want to keep a hand that rewards you for having a Thassa's Oracle and a Tainted Pact in your opening hand. So there's definitely a world where I think Arbor Elf is almost certainly always the bottom for this hand. And depending on how greedy you want to be, depends on the other card, right? So my game plan with this hand, especially since we're already on a 5, is to just turn 1 pass, turn 2 play the Confidant, make it look like we're not really up to much, hope we draw into land and maybe a little interaction so that we can either, for some reason, if Food Chain looks like it's more available, we can end step Tainted Pact trying to exile our enablers and go for Food Chain, or just hold up enough mana and protection and get to a point where we can maybe have Confidant and Rhystic Study up, gaining that interaction so that when we want to go for the Thassa's Oracle Tainted Pact, when we finally get to the 4 mana, that's a viable line. So this is definitely a keepable 5, and it's tough. It's tough because there's you do have to put 2 back here. Arbor Elf is almost like the snap put back, but the second one is definitely between Rhystic Study and Oracle. So it depends on how aggressive you want to be in this game. If you're willing to take that risk, then you probably keep the Oracle. If you want to play the safe hand, you keep the Study. Okay, let's go to a fresh 7. Let's see here. This hand is not great on sort of any level. We have Food Chain in hand, which is like dope, great, that's cool. We have an Ad Nauseam, which is nice, but no acceleration. Manipulate Fate's kind of weird with the fact that we have Mist Hollow Griffin in hand, which is just a dead card. Yawgmoth's Will in the early game is a dead card. This hand is just, the Food Chain part is sexy, but the rest of the hand, it just does absolutely nothing. So we cannot keep this. Go to our second 7. So this hand is very interesting because, unfortunately, because of the way Dryad Arbor works, it is affected by Summoning Sickness, unfortunately. As it says, you can see it right there, actually. I hope that popped up on the screen correctly. But yeah, it's affected by Summoning Sickness, and therefore cannot get that elf out on turn 1. Which makes this hand a lot more awkward. So you could play a Dryad Arbor turn 1 and wait to Elvish Mystic next turn, but I expect more out of my 7s. Having the tutor there is nice, having the early interaction is nice, but you have a Pact Negation, which is also effectively a dead card until you're trying to go for the win. I don't want to keep this 7 almost ever. Okay, so this is our 6. And it's a little painful. So the lands are nice. You always want an early Dork in a Food Chain deck, so that's nice. Having a Foresight's nice because you can exile your enablers, and you do get to cantrip it. It does draw a card after they're exiled. You get to put Mist Hollow Griffin to the bottom, but now we're sitting with this hand that has 4 lands, a Dork, which gives you more mana, and a thing that exiles cards out of your library, and you're just not doing anything. You're not drawing cards. I'm tempted to go to 5 here. And yeah, this 5 is actually pretty fine with me. So with this 5, it's not great, don't get me wrong, but like it's better than the last hand. So you definitely bottom the Griffin. Probably also the Fate Stitcher. It is 4 mana, 3 and a blue, so like it's just not a good card unless it's coming out of your library. So these get bottomed, and you're left with turn 1 Deathrite, which you can fetch your own Scalding Tarn for. And then you're gonna have 3 mana on turn 2, and eventually you can just do value Jace. And once again, you're on a mull to 5, so people aren't gonna be looking at you to like go wild here. So it's definitely like a medium-sized hand. You eventually do have an engine in Jace. It's the best hand we've seen at this point. Once again, this deck does mulligan very aggressively. It's a very explosive deck. So let's go to the next 7. There's a lot of lessons to learn in the mulligans for a deck like this because you are very all in. Okay. This is just very bad. And we're going to get rid of it. Second 7. Okay. Interesting. So here we have a spicy hand, and I think this is a snap keep 7 because here's the scenario. What you can do is on turn 1 you play an so that's tough. So you hope your opponents have a green source. If you expect your opponents to play a green source before you, this hand's amazing. If they don't, this hand actually gets really bad really fast. So if they do have a green source, you snap keep this. Because if they do have a green source, this hand goes turn 1, Green Sun Zenith for Dryad Arbor. Turn 2, you can play a Hermit Druid with one of these 2 pieces as protection, and then use the second one when you actually go to combo off the turn afterwards, which is like awesome. That's great. But if that green source doesn't happen, this hand is literally unplayable. So let's pretend that scenario doesn't happen. You can't guarantee a green source. Let's go to 6. Okay. This is a fine 6. It's fine. It's just fine on all levels. You have protection. You put an Archamoeba to the bottom before you even think about it. You have Ponder here, which is probably the best cantrip. With this many fetches, Brainstorm would actually be really amazing. But Ponder's totally fine. So turn 1, you just play the Boreal Druid. Turn 2, Ponder and see what you get. And Ponder's great. You can often... There are enough card draw engines in this deck that you do not feel bad about pondering turn 2 when you've already ramped. It's fine. Now, if you wanted to get greedy and you wanted to go deeper, which really would not consider doing with this hand, but hypothetically speaking, let's take a look what that 5 might look like if you just don't want to rely on that ponder. That's a pretty okay 5, actually. So, yeah, this is a pretty okay... So if you're going to 5 here, I think what you do is you bin the Thassa's Oracle, you bin the Noxious Revival, and you just go turn 1 Dork, turn 2 Time Twister, and if you don't think Time Twister is going to be good in that pod, you keep the Remora. If the Remora is good in the pod, then maybe you... If the Remora is like really good in the pod, there's definitely a world where you bin the Oracle and the Time Twister, and then like have a Noxious Revival to get your Remora back on top of your library. That is a scenario in which you could go for, but you would need to be playing in a pod that's like you'd have to be going like first against like Urza, Opus Thief, and something else like that, where it's just like an all artifact deck, like a Heliod or something. Just expect those all artifacts. I will only have my Remora fed decks, like a Godo, I should say, more like. So that would be a pretty okay 5. And yeah, so that's a pretty good. Anytime you get one of your little engines and a turn 1 Dork, you're like sitting pretty. All right, I think we definitely have time to get a couple more keepable 7s. So let's check this out now. This hand is a pretty good first 7. Dorks are really important to this deck, and I think Tarnished Citadel can be scary for people, but it's just a good card. So I think you go turn 1, Elves of Deep Shadow, and then turn 2, you have... I mean, having a Mental Misstep, too, in your opening hand is, like, great place to be. You have protection for when you start doing things. This is awesome. So, like, turn 2, you go for the Limb Duels Vault, set up your win or your draw. You probably, like, vault for something like a... either, if you think a Hermit Druid would be really good in your pod, you can go for that. But I would definitely go for a Tainted Pact with that Limb Duels Vault. But there's also a world where you like hit a card draw engine too pretty early on in like the next Flora stack. Like go for that. So this is just a solid 7. The Limb Duels Vault really just acts as a tutor for whatever you need at the time. So Limb Duels Vault's a great card, and this hand is very keepable on the back of that card. All right, that was an awesome first 7. So let's go to another first 7. Interesting. This is a very greedy hand. There's definitely a world where you keep this because hypothetically speaking, you go turn one, you go Windswept Heath, crack it for a forest, so either a tropical island or a bayou. I would definitely suggest the tropical island, and you can play the Arbor Elf or the birds if you like really want to feel safe about your hand. And then the next turn, you really hope by that time you draw 2 lands. But like in the worst case scenario where you don't draw these lands, you can play the Destiny Spinner, and then the turn after that you have an uncountable heuristic study. If things go right, you can also do a safe play and go with the birds the turn after that. Unfortunately, Memory's Journey is a bit of a dead card in this instant, but the rest of the hand lines up so well that I find it hard to be willing to throw this away, even with the greedy mana situation. Yeah, I think just study is so good and so good early on in the game that you kind of want to take a risk for a hand like this if it does get paid off. So that's my opinion. There's also like if you think this is too greedy, and there's no fault to that. Like that is a very appropriate response to this hand. All right, let's go down. So we're gonna do a fresh 7 again. This hand does nothing. I don't like it. You don't have anything for Diabolic Intent to sack. You have 4 lands. You have protection for nothing. Second 7. Now this hand gets very interesting. There are a few things you can do with it. You can go for a... This is a second 7. So you can go for a turn 1 Vamp Tutor for a Mana Crypt and play a turn 2 Heuristic Study, which, as I've been harping on this whole time, is a very good place to be. You can go kind of... I mean, also if you go down that route, then the Ad Nauseum's not too far away, which is pretty nice. I mean, to be honest, that's the only really time I keep this hand is you go for the turn 2 Heuristic Study, which is a little scary because there is definitely a scenario where that gets countered and you're in a bad spot. But I don't know. Anytime where you can get, especially like on the play, anytime you can get a turn 2 Heuristic Study out there, I will tend to lean towards those types of hands. All right. I think we have time to get one more keepable hand. Let's dive back in. Okay. Now this hand is how the cool kids would call it hot garbage. You don't want to Dread Return in your hand. You definitely don't want to Postmortem Lunge in your hand. Those cards are definitely for late game or Hermit Druid, and the turn 1 Gilded Drake doesn't get anything. This is garbage. Let's go to our second 7. Okay. So this is definitely another awkward Arbor Elf hand. It has dorks, it has exilers, it has interaction, but it has no engine. There's no card draw engine. There's no cards that are pushing you towards your end game. There's no like tainted packs. There's no tutors. There's no Notion Thief. There's just nothing. And because of that, which would be like, if you're looking at like just a standard hand, you're like, sure, it gives me stuff, but you don't have those engines in the command zone like with a Timna deck, so you can't keep a hand like this. Okay. Okay. This is a 6. With a 6 like this, it is... the more I look at it, the less okay it gets, actually. Carpet of Flowers is awesome, and there's definitely going to be those times where you get in a Carpet of Flowers pod where you're behind an Urza player or a Kefnet player or Fibblethip or whatever, and you're going to be behind a Teferi or a Mono Blue, and you're going to be like, Carpet of Flowers are great, but like, what does 3 counter spells get you? Especially 3 conditional counter spells, and you have to put one to the bottom. I don't like this hand at all, even in the best Carpet of Flowers scenario, so I'm shipping it. Okay. Now this is a lot better. So there's some cute stuff you can do here. Gaia's Cradle's a little awkward now that I relook at that. So that's actually probably one of our bottoms. Gaia's Cradle is actually a card I am looking to probably cut from the deck within the next couple days. So that is definitely sort of a scenario with this deck is as a possibility. I really like with this hand. There's some cute stuff you can do here. I guess the best option would be. This is tough. This is tough. I think you have to bottom the cradle because that's not turning on anytime soon. There is a world where you can exile the Mist Hologryph to the Chromox, which is very cute. However, when you go for your food chain win, that means that Chromox will no longer work, which is something you definitely need to know. And if you go for that line, you can't cast the Limdual's Vault, which is sort of the crutch of this hand. So, that being said, I actually like keeping the hand, exiling the Mist Hollow Griffin. Or, sorry, not the Mist Hollow Griffin. Exiling the Demonic Consultation, which is tough. No, I guess you can't do that, huh? No, yeah, you can. So yeah, you exile the consult. I think there's definitely two scenarios here where you can keep a hand that relies on consult, which is significantly riskier, especially seeing as you only have one of your two exilers in hand, and you're more likely to exile something you need as opposed to the actual second enabler in the deck. So I think you definitely keep this. You put Cradle to the bottom. You play your land. You play a Chromox. I think the better play and the smarter play is to exile Consult, which is not great because you don't want to exile your Forbidden Tutors, but you're going to be okay. We're going to make it work. Limdual's Vault, I really like going a little deep with Limdual's Vault. I like going so deep that you hit a Mana Crypt or something like that to get you mana, and then going for the turn, because remember, this is turn 1, Limdual's Vault. I like going for the turn 2 Whispering Madness, getting a completely fresh hand, and therefore hopefully undoing part of this mulligan. There's also scenarios where you can Limdual's Vault for like a fish to get you more cards in hand, but I definitely think going to either reset the hand or get a card draw engine with the Limdual's Vault is by far the best option. I think anything else would just be too risky. Yeah. So that's what I think about this hand. And yeah, I think that's where we're going to call it for Greedy Keeps on my Hermit Druid, Ukkima Cazur, a Hermit, a Warrior, and a Whalewolf walk into a bar deck. This, as you can tell, is definitely, you probably noticed me struggling there a little bit because this deck is probably one of my most aggressive decks and therefore one of the most aggressive mulliganing decks. It is, you play a lot of risky cards. You play a lot of cards that only work with Hermit Druid. You play a lot of cards that exile half your library if you name the wrong card. You play a lot of risky things, right? But with that risk comes the reward of sometimes you win with a Hermit Druid on turn 2, or sometimes you get a food chain on turn 1. You can exile half of your library at someone's end step with the Tainted Pact and then slam a food chain the next turn when they didn't think you had anything on board. So it's a very, very aggressive deck, but it rewards you for that aggressive playstyle. And because of that, I've been really enjoying the deck. And I've been actually able to steal a lot of wins when in scenarios where people were like, I didn't think you had any interaction in hand. So the main important things when you're looking for these mulligans with this deck would be things like card draw, a way to reshuffle your hand, some sort of forbidden tutor like Demonic Consultation or Tainted Pact, stuff like that. Or obviously a very early Hermit Druid hands. I've had the turn 1 Hermit Druids that your opponents just cannot beat. And in those scenarios, you slam those down. Now, I will say with these mulligans, I didn't see a lot of the crazy Hermit Druid hands. But when you have 100 cards, that happens sometimes. But the Hermit Druid lines are really awesome. And when they work, they really, really work. I've actually probably won... It's probably about 50-50 right now with the actual compared to the food chain outlet win and the Hermit Druid win. So it has provided a lot of wins with the deck. And just because it didn't show it here doesn't mean you haven't played the deck enough times to display that side. And also, we did a gameplay a little while ago when Braden was playing the Rodan deck where you get to see this deck in action, pre a couple changes that I've made. Definitely going to cut that Gaia's Cradle. That has probably been one card in the deck that I just haven't enjoyed the whole time, and it's going out soon. So thank you guys for joining me for an episode of Greedy Keeps. I hope you had a fun time, and I hope you, this Hermit, Druid, and a Werewolf get to walk into a bar together sometime. All right, everybody. Have a good week. Bye.